Good morning, rise and shine to the morning momentum, your daily dose of a comprehensive rundown of the top stories making the headlines. It is Thursday, the 7th of November, just a day after the US decided. We have so many stories about that, what Trump win means for Kenya and what other world leaders think of Trump's victory. Now, all that we'll find it in this broadcast. My name is Alfonsoh. The hashtag on X is The Morning Momentum, at Younib MEDIA TV, at Alfonsoh Albakwekwe. Now, let's take a look at the Daily Nation this morning. On the front page, the top story, what Trump win means for Kenya. America decides. Now, Donald Trump was yesterday elected US president, capping a remarkable triumph 4 years after he was voted out of the White House and ushering in a new American leadership likely to test democratic institutions at home and relations abroad. His victory will no doubt have major implications, but will he append policies targeting African countries? Read how the Republicans' White House means for Kenya. Now, that story is beefed up for you on page 2 and 3. At a glance, what his win means for Kenya. Number one, he prefers a free trade agreement with Kenya. Now, Biden focused on strategic trade partnership amenable to extending AGOA treaty. Number two, Trump takes dim view of financing foreign security missions. Biden pledged $300 million for Haiti mission. Now, the third issue here is that Trump will not promote abortion and LGBTQ rights in Africa. Biden championed the rights of women and sexual minorities. Number four, Trump prefers limited US funding of international organization, while Biden was open to UN reforms and multilateralism. That story is all beefed up for you on page 2 and page 3. Now, on page 10 of the Daily Nation this morning, shopping receipt that uncovered another victim of Isili quote-unquote killer. The document provided crucial The document proved crucial. It had details that would help investigators uncover the victim's identity. On page 8 of the Daily Nation this morning, crackdown on medical spas begin after cosmetic surgery death. The government has declared a 30-day nationwide crackdown on illegal and unethical facilities that are putting the lives of Kenyans at risk. And on the cover page of the Daily Nation this morning, Jivanji no longer public land, says affordable housing developer. Now, Jabavu Village Limited has confirmed securing 1.9 billion shillings loan using the title and has since withdrawn 450 million shillings. Now, that story is on the cover page. Let's get up close and candid with the American elections on page 2 of the Daily Nation this morning. What Trump win means for Kenya. Now, Africa is going to have diminished significance and other international engagements of the next American government. Stalling funding for multinational security support mission in Haiti could cripple the mission that is led by Kenya and force delay of more deployments. Also, poll outcome splits opinion, with some demanding recall of rogue Ambassador Meg Whitman. Others bemoan Harris' loss. You want to catch up with more of those insights on page 2 and page 3 of the Daily Nation this morning. The implications of Trump policies are as follows this morning. Prefers a free trade agreement with Kenya and Biden for strategic trade partnership amenable to extending AGOA treaty. Trump takes dim view of financing foreign security missions. Biden pledged $300 million for the MSS in Haiti, but Congress did not approve the remaining $200 million. Also, Trump prefers pursuit of democracy and human rights without imposing specified conditions such as abortion and LGBTQ on Africans. Biden preferred overall human rights protection, including women and LGBTQ rights. Trump says the U.S. should focus on core security, economic and human rights engagement with African partners while rejecting divisive policies that hurt the shared goals. The president-elect prefers limited funding to international organizations such as the UN if little benefits America. Biden was open to UN reforms and multilateralism, cancelled Trump's withdrawal notices from Paris Agreement and some UN agencies. Also, Trump holds a dim view of NATO and sees it as a unnecessary financial burden for the U.S., whose beneficiaries aren't paying up. Biden labeled Kenya a major non-NATO ally, elevating Nairobi to specific military support, but at a cost. Trump backs a changeover from humanitarian support to fostering free trade market with Africa. Biden enhanced humanitarian and development aid as well as projects for green energy. Trump prefers elevating countermeasures against China and Russia using public diplomacy and winning Africa from technology produced by China. Biden supported countermeasures against China but failed to reduce Beijing influence in Africa. Lastly, Trump's advisors have suggested endorsing Somaliland independence. Biden backed the sovereignty of the Federal Republic of Somalia. So this is the implication of Trump policies as compared to that of the outgoing president of the U.S., Joe Biden. Now, let's move on and take a look at page 4. Trump elected U.S. president in a stunning comeback. His loyal base of rural, white, and non-college educated voters again showed up in force. His victory will have a major impact for U.S. trade and climate change policies, war in Ukraine, and immigration. That story is beefed up for you on page 4. It's all about the big return of Donald Trump. Now, on page 5, how world leaders reacted to Trump's electoral victory. The former president declared himself winner after Fox News projected he would beat Harris. Pundits had written Trump off when he lost to Joe Biden in 2020. That story is beefed up for you on page 5. Now, these are another story you want to catch up with on the Daily Nation this morning. Still on the American elections, on page 6, Kamala made a historic dash for the White House. Here is why she fell short. Now, there is this paragraph here that says, Harris' campaign ultimately failed to overcome deep-seated voter concerns about inflation and immigration, twin issues that opinion polls shows favored Trump. Her loss underscores a profound shift in American politics over the past decade as blue-collar voters have turned increasingly Republican, a trend Trump appears to have accelerated. Now, Harris also struggled to counter another Trump-era trend, a torrent of misinformation unprecedented in modern U.S. elections. An avalanche of misrepresentations and falsehoods about her record was spread by the former president and amplified on right-wing websites and media, including conspiracy theories on issues ranging from migrant crime to voter fraud. So, Top Union publicly embarrassed Harris by declining to endorse a Democratic candidate for the first time since 1996. Her campaign failed to overcome deep-seated concerns about inflation and immigration. Now, on page 7, this decision to choose a convicted felon over sober intellectual is not without a good reason. So, U.S. electorate turns its back on Kamala Harris. You want to catch up with more of those sentiments on page 7 of the Daily Nation this morning. Away from the American elections on page 8, crackdown on illegal spas starts after death at a cosmetic clinic. Now, Lucy Wambui's death is attributed to a botched liposuction at a facility in Nairobi. Now, let's move on and take a look at page 10 of the Daily Nation this morning. Judge grants probation to man who killed wife over cheating claims. Now, the High Court in Eldoret has sentenced a man who killed his wife after accusing her of cheating to 3 years of probation. Shaban Maro Bilali, 45 years old, initially charged with the murder of his spouse, was convicted of manslaughter on November 4th, a crime he committed in a fit of rage. The incident on March 23, 2020 was triggered by Bilali's discovery of a video he believed shows his wife engaging in sexual acts with another man. That story is beefed up for you on page 10. Let's stay there a little bit. How a shopping receipt uncovered another victim of Isli quote-unquote killer. Now, Degane Muhammad is under investigation for the murders of 3 women in Isli. The family of Deka Abdinur had filed a missing person report at California Police Station on October 24th. Now, these are the investigations: a receipt, M-Pesa transaction, and mobile number. On October 31st, police discover mutilated body parts near Langata Cemetery in Nairobi. They later identified the victim as Deka Abdinur after investigators linked a supermarket receipt at the scene to her recent purchases. Police identified the suspect as Hashim Dagane Mohammed through mobile records and CCTV footage. Dagane is under investigation for the murders of Amina Abdirashid, Waris Dahabo Dawood, and Nusaibia Abdi Mohammed, whose bodies were found mutilated across Nairobi. Dagane is currently in police custody. Now, let's move on and take a look at other stories this morning. We take a look at now page 14. Fresh gang violence scares Kisauni locals. This is the reign of terror. Now, Mombasa County Commissioner says security officials cracking down on criminal elements. Machete-wielding attackers sever off riders' hand in latest incident. You want to catch up with more of that on page 14. Now, let's move on and take a look at the expert opinion this morning. Ruto should slay ogre of concurrence for state communications to thrive. Now, President William Ruto's exclamation that has been quote-unquote lonely at the presidency isn't for lack of countries, busybodies and cheerleaders. The essence of his lone wolf howling is the absence of support in articulating public policy despite existence of the cabinet, public and civil service, bureaucracy, infrastructure. It's a warning shot on what's generally wrong with government public communications. You want to catch up with more of those insights here on page 16. So, these are sentiments of Kibisu Kabatesi, who says, and I quote, "In a sense, the president's public admission of being overwhelmed is itself an act of emollients." End of quote. You want to catch up with that on page 16. Let's stay there a little bit. Cheaper smartphones will bridge digital gap. Now, a majority of Kenyans do not own an internet-enabled smartphone in 2024. On page 17, empower MCAs to boost county oversight role. Now, a key role of the members of the county assembly is oversight on public finance management in the development in the devolved units. Being at the grassroots, MCAs are better placed than senators to keep an eye on the governors, some of whom have featured prominently in the revelations on the looting of county funds. Now, that story is beefed up for you on page 17. Also, Kenya keeps faith the world is losing. Kenya reported the highest trust in news in Africa and the second highest in the world at 64%. That story is beefed up for you on page 17. Now, today in history, The Court of Appeal rules that 5-year jail terms imposed on 2 MPs Godfrey Muhuri Muchiri of Embakasi Left and Jesse Mwangi Gachoho of Makuyu were lawful. CJ James Wicks supported the High Court's decision. The MPs were jailed for stealing 485 bags of coffee on transit worth 1,212,500 belonging to Kenatco. You want to catch up with that also on page 18. Now, moving on swiftly to county news on page 23 of the Daily Nation this morning. Now, UDA and ODM face litmus test in polls. President William Ruto's United Democratic Alliance and Raila Odinga's Orange Democratic Movement face a significant test as they prepare to resume grassroots polls later this month. In August, Office of the Registrar of Political Parties directed UDA to conclude its grassroots elections within 180 days. That story is beefed up for you on page 23. Let's take a look at Isiolo County. Senator now claims death threat in feud with the governor. Both leaders were elected on the Jubilee Party ticket. Governor and senator have clashed over the management of county affairs. Now, the political war between Isiolo Governor Abdi Guyo and Senator Fatuma Dulo has intensified, with the latter now alleging that her life is in danger due to a supposed plot to assassinate her. The two leaders, despite being elected on the Jubilee Party ticket in 2022, have clashed repeatedly over the management of county affairs. Now, let's take a look at more county news. Former Rustlers Damascus moment on trip to Entebbe. Now, Lobot Ngirolem is now advocating for peace after meeting with President Museveni. Win-win deal for Sengwer KFS over forest, that is the Kenya Forest Service. The controversy over the recurring forced evictions of the Sengwer from Embout Forest in Elgeyo Marakwet County is set to be resolved following a pact between the community and the Kenya Forest Service on the conservation of the degraded water tower. Now, also on page 24, phone call mama that nailed murder suspect. When Abdulaziz Ali Swale answered a call on his late grandmother's phone, he murmured that he had a knife in his hand and was hearing voices telling him to kill her. Unaware of the caller, his words revealed disturbing thoughts which became crucial evidence leading to his conviction. Swale now faces a lengthy prison sentence after the High Court in Mombasa ruled that the prosecution proved his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, for the property lovers, the DN2 article is beefed up for you this morning, and it's all about buy, sell, and buy again. Now, Kenya's real estate market offers promising growth by planning carefully and staying informed. Investors can not only reach their financial goals, but also build lasting value for the future. That story is beefed up for you on page 25. Now, let's take a look at the international news this morning. Russia may take more steps up nuclear ladder. Security expert Karaganov says an attack on NATO will make Europeans run. Kremlin says it is waiting to see what happens when Trump takes power. That story is beefed up for you on page 29. Also, Africa Energy Expo calls for solutions to power continent. This is the first expo. Now, participants at the inaugural Africa Energy Expo 2024 in Kigali, Rwanda, called for sustainable energy solutions across the continent to power its future. Let's take a look at Abuja briefly. Nigerian Army Chief dies at 56. Now, Nigeria's Army Chief Lagbaja has died after a period of illness, aged 56. President Bola Tinubu has announced he died in Lagos on Tuesday night. The exact details of his illness were not shared. In a statement shared on X by presidential spokesperson Bayo Onanuga Tinubu expressed his heartfelt condolences to General Lagbaja's family. You want to catch up with that on page 29. Let's take a look at business news now. KRA systems outage hits operations at Port of Mombasa. A Kenya Revenue Authority system downtime over the past 5 days has affected operations at the Mombasa port, leaving consignments of tea for export worth more than $325 billion. Now, also CEOs revive growth plans on falling operating costs. Findings for October suggest optimism among chief executives. Industry captains move signals an uptick in prospects for the first time in 6 months. Now, briefly, in energy sector, KenGen begins search for steam in Eswatini. KenGen is conducting exploration surveys in Eswatini to establish the country's geothermal energy potential, underlining the firm's growing status as the go-to company in unlocking the potential of Africa's geothermal power. The Eswatini deal, whose value remains undisclosed, adds to contracts that KenGen has bagged to drill 3 geothermal exploration wells in Tanzania's Ngozi area. In matters insurance, Britam launches cover for women. Britam has launched a new insurance product targeted at medical and non-medical cover for women. Known as Malkia, it has a minimum annual premium of 620 shillings and provides a cashback benefit after diagnosis of medical conditions such as cervical, ovarian, and breast cancer. In the credit sector, private sector loans growth hits 21-year low. Growth in lending by banks to the private sector slowed to a 21-year low of 0.4% in September, piling pressure on the Central Bank of Kenya to lower its base rate despite concerns by the International Monetary Fund that this could trigger fresh inflammatory pressure. That story is beefed up for you on page 30. Now, let's take a look at sports news. Sports news on the Daily Nation this morning. Now, Kenya seeks to host 2029 World Championships. AK President Jack Tuwei says application was forwarded in August. Murkomen confident Kenya will be the first African country to stage a global event. Now, in other stories, NOC-K UON introduced coaching program. The National Olympic Committee of Kenya, NOC-K, has partnered with the University of Nairobi's Department of Physical Education and Sports to introduce a new 6-month certificate course in sports coaching. This course aims to advance the skills and knowledge of coaches in various Olympic sports, emphasizing scientific approaches and hands-on experience. Now, let's move on to page 38. Football legends pay tribute to Oduor. Now, public viewing of body scheduled for tomorrow in Kisumu, and the burial will take place on Saturday in Makunga, Kakamega County. Dozens of former internationals attend fundraiser in Nairobi for funeral of famous ex-Kenya and Gor captain. That story is briefed up for you on page 38. On page 39 this morning, missing ingredient in long fight against hooliganism. Now, Leopards identify 12 fans suspected to have assaulted coach Trucha. Acting FKF CEO Korir says clubs need to take active role in stopping football violence. That story is briefed up for you on page 39. On FKF elections, Mwendwa is eligible to vie, football polls body insists. Now, Football Kenya Federation Electoral Board Chairman Hesbon Wangila has contradicted Sports Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen by stating that outgoing FKF President Nick Mwendwa is eligible to vie as a running mate in national elections scheduled for December 7th. Now, also still on the local league, another Gor Mahia loss, another round of chaos. Chaos erupted for the third consecutive Football Kenya Federation Premier League match involving Gor Mahia as their fans displayed their anger against the coach and the team's performance yesterday. This time, it was Kogalo's away game against Bandari at Ukunda Showground in Kwale County. Now, that's the end of sports news on the cover page of the Daily Nation this morning. Jivanji Estate no longer public land, developer now says. Developer, National Bank MD are expected to appear before the County Assembly. City Hall says that in 2018, the title certificate for Jivanji Estate was registered in the name of Nairobi City County. The title deed of the land is with the bank, and 1.9 billion shillings is the amount Jabavo Village Limited secured from the National Bank of Kenya using the title deed of Jivanji Estate as one of the securities. Now, on our last story this morning, Gachagua gets nod to withdraw court case. Now, the Court of Appeal has allowed former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua to withdraw an application seeking to hold proceedings before the High Court challenging his impeachment. Through lawyer Paul Mwite, Mr. Gachagua yesterday informed judges Patrick Kiage, Agri Muchelule, and George Odunga that the matter had been overtaken by events as the conservatory orders prohibiting the swearing-in of Professor Kithure Kindiki as Deputy President had already been lifted. Professor Kindiki was sworn in as the third Deputy President under the 2010 Constitution on November 1st, a day after the High Court lifted the order blocking him from assuming office. Now, with that story of Rigathi Gachagua, we come to the end of the morning momentum of today, Thursday, November 7th. Thank you so much for staying with us right here on Younib TV. We appreciate your support. All by extension, our heartfelt gratitude also goes to all those who made this broadcast a success. Behind the lens, Raphael, Wangila, and the Chief Controller, Anifa, Kavira. I have been your host, Alfonsoh. See you tomorrow, same time, same place. Until then, enjoy the rest of your day.